Hi everyone, I'm Anthony DiMoro, and welcome to another edition of Ranters Insider right here on SportRantz TV, courtesy of SportRantz.com. We have another great rant-filled edition of Ranters Insider just for you, and it's going to be filled with a ton of topics circulating the sports world today. We're going to talk about NCAA Basketball, a little bit of the NFL Draft. I'm going to talk about some recent NFL trades that went down, and I'm going to be debuting a new segment right here on Ranters Insider called Fan Mail. And basically what Fan Mail is I took to Twitter, at Anthony DiMoro, if you want to follow me or tweet me, I took to Twitter and I asked you, the fans, to ask me a question related to sports. Some of your questions will make the air on this very show. So in the future, when it becomes the middle of the week and I send that tweet out looking for your sports questions, tweet them over to me. If they're good enough, we'll put them on the air. And remember, that's Anthony DiMoro. You can follow me on Twitter. And also, don't forget, follow SportRantz at SportRantz. That's Rants with a Z. And also, don't forget, folks, you can connect with me beyond Twitter and beyond Facebook. And of course, our Facebook fan page is located at facebook.com/SportsRantz. Again, that's Rants with a Z. Come on over and like us. But you can come on over and connect with me another way. And that's on the social networking community for sports fans, sports talk, and sports athletes. That's SportRantz.com. Memberships are 100% free. And we have some brand new news. We have some great news rolling out soon that is going to benefit radio, show, sports radio, and podcast hosts. I'm telling you, this is really kick-ass, really innovative, and if you really want to get more interactive with your fan base and your listeners, well, you're going to have to stay tuned. Because what we roll out in the next couple of weeks, and what we announce very, very soon, is going to change the game. All right, guys, let's start off first and foremost with the topic that is on everybody's lips in the sports world today, and it's Rutgers firing of coach Mike Rice for his recent conduct in practice with his own team. Chucking basketballs, using gay slurs, basically flipping the frig out on his players in the most unprofessional, uncomfortable manner. And the thing about this is it's completely viral. So let's take a look at it right there. And you can see that this is, you can go on YouTube and hear the audio of this, but you can see right there that this is far beyond what should be acceptable. And what I have a problem with when it comes to this particular story is how Rutgers handled this. Now initially, keep in mind folks, this incident happened back in December 2012. Rutgers suspended him for 3 games. And now on April 3rd, 2013, April 2nd, 2013 was the right time to fire him. Now you have a problem with it. Now you want to do the right thing. You're not feeding me BS. This isn't a move by Rutgers to right a wrong or to prove a point or to do the right thing. This is merely to save their ass, to cover their ass, and wipe the egg on their face from the embarrassment due to this viral video going viral and everybody having harsh reactions to this. And I think this speaks to a bigger problem in sports as a whole. Now, while we can isolate Mike Rice's incident at Rutgers and his treatment of his team as one incident speaking to a greater problem, the issue is the sports culture. There seems to be this, and you can't just isolate it to just coaches and personnel and team personnel and athletic directors and team presidents. You have to also look at the conduct of players. And I am no way trying to justify what Mike Rice did. All I am saying is you cannot just look at one big issue in sports and clearly just look at one side of it, and that being the coaches. Just looking at how coaches and team personnel treat their players and what their conduct is, but you have to start looking at players. A lot of this verbiage and a lot of these actions goes on during the games, goes on social media. We've seen it hundreds of times on Twitter. Athletes saying bad things or saying things they shouldn't be on social media. And I think this issue, as it boils more to the surface, we're seeing more examples of this very issue. And it's a cultural issue. It's a society issue. And it needs to be policed in some way, shape, or form. We can't just look at this incident with Rutgers and Mike Rice and look at it and fire him and send him off to the unemployment line and wipe our hands and be done with it. You have to start looking at the tolerance as a whole in sports. How accepted are, the gay players into a locker room like that? How are players, what is their conduct on the court? What are the things that they are saying on the court? You can't just hold coaches responsible for this behavior or accountable. You have to look at the conduct of everybody involved in the sport, and not just college basketball. You have to look at football, basketball, hockey, on the pro level, baseball, all of these sports, and including the ones I did not mention. There needs to be a look at how we are conducting ourselves from a cultural and societal standpoint. So I think that question and that issue needs to be raised, and not just when incidents like this pop up and it's a hot talking point for a show like mine and radio shows. It shouldn't be discussed then. It should be continuously discussed so we can avoid issues like this in the future. I have a problem with this when Rutgers, I think the president and the athletic director should be shown the door as well. Those you may disagree with me, but to me, it's inexcusable to suspend this guy when the incident happened back in December when you were originally shown this video. It's inexcusable to hand him a 3-game suspension and then several months later decide it was bad enough to cause his firing, only because you were embarrassed, and rightfully so, when this video went viral. Sorry, it's too late to save face now. It's too late to save your ass, and there needs to be more heads rolling at Rutgers. And it should start at the top. Now we're going to stick in college sports, folks, and I'm going to talk about something, well, that just blew my mind and I really want to rant about. And it's about NFL draft prospect, quarterback Geno Smith, and a little analysis he got from one Nolan Nawrocki from Pro Football Weekly. Now, Nawrocki, if you read his analysis, if you Google it, you can find the article itself and what he said. He basically illustrated his analysis, and he conveyed it with kind of this personal vendetta he had against Geno Smith. He questioned his character, who he is as a person, how mentally stable he is, how intelligent he is, and it went far behind the confines of a football field and what he does in a football field. And the tone of it illustrated that. Now, Nolan Nawrocki, this isn't an isolated incident. He took Cam Newton to task a couple years ago when Cam Newton was getting ready for the draft, calling him a fraud and a con artist. Now, what I find interesting about his analysis of Geno Smith is his only 2 quarterback comparisons he could make was Kelli Smith and Aaron Brooks, 2 other black quarterbacks. Now, Nolan Nawrocki, now you may have an issue with his analysis, and rightfully so, but I think this speaks to what he truly is, and that is a bigot and a racist. He has an issue not with the skill set of Nolan Smith, and not with the skill set of Cam Newton as a football player. And keep in mind, he was way off base with Cam Newton as far as the skill set translating to the NFL is concerned. Nolan Nawrocki doesn't have a problem with how these guys play on the football field. He has a problem with the color of their skin and the fact that they are black. Now, Nawrocki couldn't put together an NFL career after his college days were over. He couldn't do that. So he has an issue. I don't know what his issue is with black quarterbacks, but his 2 incidents of ripping apart almost on a personal, uncomfortable level of 2 draft prospects are both black quarterbacks. So I think Nolan Nawrocki needs to be held accountable for such things such as this. And he needs to be shown the door. If we can fire somebody like Rob Parker for his racist tirade on ESPN's First Take, and I'm not saying the two situations are the same, but these are both racially motivated incidents that need to be handled similar ways. I think Nolan Nawrocki should be shown the door at Pro Football Weekly. And let's take a minute and sit back, folks. When's the last time you heard Nolan Nawrocki's name? Exactly. What this idiot did, his bigot and his racist comments that he made, just drew attention to his articles. And that's all this idiot does, is he just stood on a soapbox like Pro Football Weekly, something that gets a lot of traffic, and he spouted racist, bigoted driven comments. And he should be held accountable. This is an embarrassment for not only Pro Football Weekly, but the entire draft analysis process, from bloggers to website owners to media publications. This is an embarrassment, and he should be held accountable. All right, let's move on to pro football, folks. And let's talk about two trades that went down. I talked about this last night on my show, the Rantin' and Raven Show, right over on Sports Rants Radio. And if you want to listen to that episode of the Rantin' and Raven Show, just go over to sportsrants.com/radio. I had a great interview with UAlbany's Geno Smith, who's an NFL draft prospect himself. And we talked about that whole process, but I also talked about this. And I went on Twitter and I got some interesting feedback from you. I said the Cardinals trade of Carson Palmer from the Raiders, where they acquired the 33-year-old quarterback, well, that would lead to Carson Palmer turning in a Pro Bowl type season. Now, I mean that because I really like the offensive firepower Carson Palmer has to work with in Arizona. Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, and if you look, and those people who want to sit here and call me crazy, look at Carson Palmer's first full season in Oakland when he grasped the season. Over 4,000 yards passing. That is nothing to sneeze at. And then ask yourself, who was Carson Palmer throwing to? Could you name them? One receiver, two receivers. Could you name them? That's even more impressive. In his second season, he barely had a running game. Run DMC, Darren McFadden, was injured for most of it. So he had no running game, no receivers to throw to, and he still put up some gaudy numbers. Now, I'm not saying Carson Palmer is the next Peyton Manning, or we should be getting ready to see Arizona in the Super Bowl, but all I'm saying is it's not that far-fetched to assume that Carson Palmer is going to have a big statistical season. And he very well could go to the Pro Bowl. And just because I said he's going to have a Pro Bowl season doesn't mean he's going to be one of the 3 to 4 quarterbacks to actually make the Pro Bowl. Miami Dolphins safety Rashad Jones last year turned in a Pro Bowl season. He didn't make the Pro Bowl, but that doesn't negate the fact that he had a Pro Bowl type season. It's a compliment. It is basically saying that he's going to have a high level season of production. So I love this trade for Arizona, and you know what? I love it from Oakland's standpoint as well. They traded off some draft picks, and this is a guy that they were going to eventually release anyway, so they saved the cap space, and they actually got something. Although it was minimal value, they got something for him instead of just shipping him off. So I love this move from Oakland's standpoint. It's the other move they made that it really has me scratching my head. They traded with the Seattle Seahawks for their backup quarterback and career backup quarterback, the 27-year-old Matt Flynn. This is the same Matt Flynn who was one of the top quarterbacks in the 2012 free agent class, and he couldn't sniff out a great deal from Miami, who his old coach of offensive coordinator, Joe Philbin, was there, who knows him better than almost anybody, and he didn't even think he was worth the deal he was looking for. He ended up signing in Seattle, where he was beaten out by rookie Russell Wilson in the preseason. Green Bay recently, there was an article that came out that said the Packers were concerned about Matt Flynn's arm strength and they didn't think it was starter quality. Well, guess what? I agree. I haven't seen anything from this kid to convince me that he's a starter. And you know what? We don't have a big enough sample size of his work to make that judgment one way or the other, but there's nothing that's telling me he's going to be explosive. He's going to be the answer in Oakland. Now, I don't have this problem if you're acquiring Matt Flynn to take the spot of Carson Palmer. He's a 27-year-old quarterback. You roll the dice on that. He's still young, and he could work out in the end. But if you're in a true rebuilding mode, giving up draft picks and mortgaging your future even more defeats the purpose of a rebuilding project. Now, I understand making a trade for a high-level quarterback, but you made a trade for somebody who hasn't proven squat in the NFL, that Seattle was looking to unload, and you mortgaged 2 draft picks for him. That's 2 pro players that could fill your roster. And judging by some of the talent that's come out of the 6th, 7th round and beyond, you could end up missing on a really, really talented player. You know who else was drafted in the 6th round? Russell Wilson. And he's the starter in Seattle. So I have a little bit of problems with the Oakland Raiders and how they're managing their rebuilding process. All right, so let's get back to NCAA basketball for a little bit, and I got to toot my own horn and puff my chest out. I've been saying the sole reason I couldn't fill out a bracket this year is I couldn't take the fan out of me. And instead of filling out a bracket, I said the winner's going to be Michigan. I got a lot of laughs. But guess where Michigan is in the Final Four? And guess who they're playing? Syracuse. And I think Michigan is going to basically beat Syracuse in the same manner that they just beat up on Florida, who runs a similar zone defense. I love Michigan, and they seem destined to win the championship this year. Comebacks, Trey Burke proving that he is undoubtedly the player of the year, and just great performances from everybody on their team. Minus Tim Hardaway Jr. Where are you, buddy? Can you hit a damn shot? Seriously? Other than that, I think Michigan is destined to be cutting down the nets and hoisting up that championship trophy. Now, they're going to play Syracuse this weekend, and the other game is Wichita State, the surprise team in the Final Four, going up against Louisville, who pretty much you got to be rooting for after that terrible, terrible injury to Ware. The broken leg was it was disgusting to watch. Very uncomfortable to see. It was one of the worst sports injuries I've ever seen. Personally, watching a TV, I still think the worst one is Sid Justice or Sid Vicious back in World Championship Wrestling when he came off the top rope and landed, and I was the most disgusting one I've ever seen. This one's right up there. But Louisville definitely has the sort of spirit and the heart and that nice story that makes it easy to root for. If you're writing the screenplay or the script for another sports movie to motivate and inspire, well, Louisville is that team. They are that muse. So, I think Louisville gets past Wichita State, but I think the magic runs out in the championship game against Michigan. And that's right, my Michigan Wolverines are going to be national champions. And Trey Burke is going to capture the player of the year. Those are my 2 predictions. I'm sticking with them. I've stuck with them since before the tournament started. I'm not bailing now because I've been right. So Michigan will continue on this weekend, and they'll beat Syracuse. And of course, Louisville will beat Wichita State. All right, folks, let's open up the mailbag. Let's answer your questions. You've tweeted them to me, and a couple of them made the air. And each and every week on Ranters Insider, we're going to do this in our fan mail section. So, let me just pick up the fan mail right here. And Rob Brown 3 asked me, if Mike Rice had a strong resume, does Rutgers fire him? Do they still fire him? Well, Mike, Rice would still get fired. You know what? I don't think this has anything to come down to resume. I think it just has to come down with the actions. And Rutgers, there's no way, after this went viral and this, basically got shown to the masses, there's no way they retained him, regardless of what his resume is. Hey, Bob Knight had a great resume too, and he still got fired. So and Joe Paterno, the same thing. Joe Paterno, thinking of college football. That thing was so large, they had no choice but to fire him. But Mike Rice, regardless of his resume, would have been fired as soon as this went viral. And as I alluded to earlier in the show, he should have been fired a lot sooner, regardless of his resume. Remember, it's all about actions and how you conduct yourself. And this one, well, they were just caught in a rock and a hard place. All right, at Lee Kelly asked me, where do you see the Yankees going this year, and how long before the young guns are called up? Well, that's two questions in one, so I'm going to start off with the first part of it. How far will the Yankees go? Not very far. And this actually, I can tie in both answers into one big answer for you. And this is their resistance to put any trust in their youth. I understand a lot of them aren't major league ready, but Lyle Overbay, Vernon Wells, really? That's your answer? So, and this is where I get I have a huge problem with the Yankees is their resistance to go young. You're going to suck this year. The problem, I watched the opening game. They collected a stunning 6 hits. Woo! Wow. The problem is the Yankees cannot seem to pull their heads out of their asses with the way they play baseball. It was evident last year that going for the long ball all the time does not translate to victories in the playoffs. They were inept with hitting in the playoffs. And how did they address that? Well, let's get some more aged veterans tossed to the side. And you're going to keep selling me this idea you want to get your payroll down, but you want to make a trade for Vernon Wells? Bullcrap. So the Yankees aren't going to make the playoffs. Their pitching will make them respectable. Derek Jeter will make them respectable. Ichiro will hit and make them respectable. But they're an atrocity. Robinson Cano is their big bright spot right there, but even he, in big game moments and in big games, he doesn't show up. And that's the problem I have with Robbie Cano. Where is his big game moment? I don't see it. And that's what you need from guys you're about to dump a ton of money on. And they should, because he's the heart and soul of their team now as Derek Jeter rides off into sunset. And as A-Rod continues to be an atrocity to the game of baseball and just as a human being in a whole. Robinson Cano needs to start stepping up and carrying this team. They still can't hit. And when you can't hit against the Boston Red Sox, you got an issue. I don't care if it's John Lester on the mound or anybody else. They still can't hit. They can't. Unless they're launching the ball over the fence, they don't know how to manufacture runs. That's an issue. And until they change that culture, you're going to see some negative results in the Bronx. All right, another question at Melon Sports related to baseball. Who is your pick for the World Series winner this year? Very, very early. And a lot of people want to have the sexy pick of the Los Angeles Angels and Anaheim, and we got burned on that last year. It always seems like the World Series winner is the team you really don't expect to be in the World Series and win it. It just kind of sneaks up out of the blue. But I have a hard time not thinking the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to make a push in the World Series. They had, Clayton Kershaw, had a great debut, great season opener. And, that's just momentum they're building. I think Los Angeles is, they're going to be in the World Series, and I think they're going to win it. So to answer your question, I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't think there's an AL team that can really slug with them and pitch with them. The Angels, Albert Pujols is continuously declining. Josh Hamilton's going to be right down that road soon. They're going to have a ton of money tied up in players that are on the downfall. So I definitely don't have any faith in them. I think the Baltimore Orioles can make a deep push, but I think they're still too young. I think they'll get their first taste of the World Series. So I'm going to call Orioles, and I'm going to call Dodgers in the World Series, with the winner being the Los Angeles Dodgers. One more question from Twitter out of our fan mail here. Keshi's Cuties, I said that, I almost said Cooties. Keshi's Cuties, sorry I'm butchering that name. Should Brittany Griner go to the NBA, or should Mark Cuban put his money where his mouth is and draft her? Brittany Griner definitely should go to the WNBA. She's going to make good money there. She's going to be great for that sport. So I don't think there's any way that she ends up not going to the WNBA. The opportunity to do something special there and grow that game, you never know. She could be that sport's Michael Jordan. You do not know that. She could be that league's Michael Jordan. So I think that allure alone, listen, she's a tremendous physical specimen in women's basketball. There's no way she doesn't bring it to the pro level, in my opinion. I think Mark Cuban saying what he said, saying he would draft Brittany Griner, I think that's more to kind of poke at David Stern than something that he would actually do. That's no diss on women. I'm sure a lot of them can play with the men, but Mark Cuban, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think he has any real conviction in doing what he said he would do, and that's draft Brittany Griner to the Dallas Mavericks. I simply think he wants to poke David Stern and make him have to address that taboo should women play with men and have to play with men on the, in the same sport and the same league. I think that's what he's trying to do. I think he's just trying to irk David Stern and get him to try to tackle that taboo topic where really no matter how he answers it, I don't think it could be the right answer. But also in the NBA, I don't think it's fair to put Brittany Griner in there. These are men twice, sometimes 3 times the size of her and the girth. We're talking about 250-pound, 220-pound men barreling down. And she would just, from a physical standpoint, I think she would score because you can score in the NBA. But her size alone at the position she would play, I just don't think it'd be a smart move from a physical standpoint to do that. You'd be taking a big risk with your health in doing so, and injury. So, and plus you don't want to turn a talent like Brittany Griner into a sideshow, which is exactly what she would be. It would be like, remember when Master P back in the 90s went and he wanted to go play basketball? It's sideshow. Like Dennis Rodman is now. He's a friggin' sideshow. And the idiots across seas negotiating with, people want to drop bombs on us. Are you serious? That guy's a sideshow. He's an idiot. So Brittany Griner, you don't want to turn her into a sideshow. You don't want to turn her into that at all. So I, for one, think it's funny that Mark Cuban said that, and I don't think maybe he did, but my opinion is I think he was just doing that more to irk David Stern than anything else. And Brittany Griner will go on to the WNBA. All right, guys, that will wrap it up for this edition of Ranters Insider. Thank you, as always, for your support. And remember, we're going to start incorporating some interviews into this show. We're going to line them up. I have a very interesting topic regarding women in sports media. I'm telling you, I read an awesome article. We'll talk more about it. I'll allude more to it on Twitter and on SportsRantz.com and on our Facebook fan page. So make sure you get in touch with all of them. That's on the docket. And before I go, folks, one last thing. I want you to check out our FanFare section. This week's FanFare spotlight is Kelli Stack, and she is long considered to be one of the best female hockey players in the world. You can go on over to sportsrants.com/fanfare and check out Kelli Stack's blog right there. Remember, FanFare is a place where you guys can have a backstage pass to your favorite athletes and personalities involved in sports. So Kelli Stack, she's been a gracious guest of ours on Sports Rants Radio on my show, The Rantin' and Raven Show. And now she's in our spotlight this week. So go on over sportsrants.com/Kelli Stack. Remember, that's Kelly with an I. And read about her recovery from her injury and her return to dominance in professional hockey. All right, folks, another edition of Ranters Insider is in the books. You've been watching Sports Rants TV. You've been listening to Sports Rants Radio. Come on over to sportsrants.com and make your presence heard and interact with me. Don't forget, send me your questions next week to be included in fan mail. And as always, thank you for watching Sports Rants TV. Until next time, happy ranting.